AI is poised to shape our future by automating many of the tasks that only humans have been able to do so far, and we're just at the beginning of this major transformation. However, along with potentially incredible benefits for society, there are also risks, incredible risks, that stem from the nature of the technology itself and the way it is used. So today, we're here to talk about one of these major risks that stem at the intersection between nuclear decision-making and AI. So, thank you very much for having me here. My name is Alicia Saltini, and I work as a research coordinator for the European Leadership Network. As Elena said, focusing most of my work on research projects at the intersection of AI and nuclear risks. Now, nuclear weapon states, namely China, France, Russia, the UK, and the US, are currently considering integrating this technology into military platforms that could potentially directly or indirectly affect the nuclear decision making. Now, while there are many perceived benefits to these integrations, there are also many risks which are associated with critical decision making. Now, on that note, today I'll be presenting the findings of the report that I authored, which focuses exactly on this topic. Now, this research was conducted as part of a project for the US Department of State, which assessed how nuclear weapon states perceive the integration of AI within nuclear command, control, and communication systems, so-called NC3. Now, very simply put, when we talk about NC3, we refer to the means through which executive authority over nuclear decisions is exercised and now command and control of nuclear forces are executed. Now, as part of our project, we commissioned 4 bibliographies from China, France, Russia, and the UK to map out this country's internal conversation on this issue with our colleagues here and on the call will present at the end of my presentation. But basically, these bibliographies were essential for us to identify common ground across the P5 perspectives and to inform our findings and policy recommendations. Now, the report was first presented in Washington, D.C. last November. So this is our second public event that we're hosting on this issue, this time with VCDNP to familiarize policymakers and particularly the European-based diplomatic community on this important topic. But before diving into this issue, I want to make 3 topics up front. So the first point is that while demonstrating incredible capabilities that are advancing by the day, AI is not a panacea and has fundamental problems that are related to the technology itself, ranging from issues with reliability to vulnerabilities to cyber attack, to our inability to align these models to our goals and to understand how AI makes predictions. Second point, the extent of AI capabilities and its limitations and implications are not fully understood. So as this technology continues to be developed, capabilities are poised to change in the sense that they could potentially solve some of current problems, but potentially even generating a whole new set of ones, which we're just unable to predict at this point in time. Then third point, when AI is intersected in the nuclear domain, although there are some benefits that can be drawn from a cautious integration with an understanding of the nature of the technology, there is a wide range of risks which depend upon different AI technologies and the area where it is integrated, not only within NC3, but also with the multitude of systems that feed into NC3. So therefore, because of all these variables, the implication of AI integration in high-stakes military platforms are incredibly nuanced and complex. And so as a result, to make sense and some clarity from this complexity, we have developed a set of metrics which allow us to identify high-risk integrations and establish thresholds for integration to ensure that in case of a system failure within NC3 systems are not compromised and that risk of miscalculations are not increased. Now, my presentation will first talk about the technology to understand what we are talking about and what it means to integrate AI within nuclear decision-making. I'll then talk about the risks and benefits that this technology provides, and I'll compare the different perceptions between nuclear weapon states. I'll then conclude my presentation with recommendations for risk reduction, and afterwards the authors of the bibliographies will talk about individual perception from nuclear weapon states. To begin with, as I was saying, and to break down the nexus of AI and nuclear decision making, we need to first understand what AI is. Now, AI is a very diverse field with many approaches, which are incredibly varied and present vastly different characteristics and levels of risk. Today's advanced AI models, which have been at the forefront of public perception lately, differ massively from the type of AI, of rule-based AI, that was already incorporated into NC3 in the past. So today's advanced AI models are, for the most part, based on deep learning, which is practically a technique that is based loosely on how neurons work in the brain, and have demonstrated an incredible ability to generalize across diverse tasks and to continuously improve with higher quality data, with more data set, and with more computational power. This has led to the development of tremendous capabilities. But these capabilities also bring many unresolved problems that by all means hamper their applicability into sensitive domains, and particularly those that affect the nuclear decision making. Now, there are 4 technological limitations that advanced AI systems have. First one, they are unreliable. So for instance, these models are prone to hallucinations, which means that they confidently produce incorrect outputs that are not supported by their training data. So this could mean anything, ranging from a chatbot making up making up facts about historical events, to potentially vision models seeing things that are not even there. So if integrated into NC3, this could mean potentially hallucinating an incoming attack. Second, these systems are a black box, which means that it is very difficult for us to understand how the underlying process, AI process, lead to a specific output. So, of course, this has profound implications, especially in critical decision-making scenarios where human operators basically have no way to corroborate AI-generated predictions. Third, AI systems are particularly susceptible to cybersecurity threats in ways that traditional systems are not, which basically open up new avenues for hackers to infiltrate and tamper with sensitive military data. So these vulnerabilities obviously provide adversaries and non-state actors with untold opportunities to compromise AI systems, for example, by leading to failures to detect an incoming attack. Fourth and last, as these models develop and become more and more capable, we must ensure that they're aligned to our goals and values, which unfortunately today is still a very big challenge. So now, although these risks that AI brings are widely acknowledged by nuclear weapon states, their desire to gain a strategic advantage over adversaries in a changing geopolitical environment, combined with the fears of lagging behind competitors in AI's innovation, might push the states to integrate AI technologies into high-stakes military platforms, potentially resulting in safety compromises. So we must avoid that. But the good news is that although the US, the UK, and France were the only ones to officially commit to maintain human control over nuclear decisions, Russia and China seem to be pointing at the same direction, which means that there doesn't seem to be an interest for nuclear weapon states to integrate AI into core strategic decision-making functions. Now, I'll get back to this point later, but just to put this into perspective, the interest of the states seem to lie on applying AI in certain small, narrow auxiliary functions of NC3 or of systems that feed into NC3. For example, for automating the identification of objects and to detect potential pre-launch activities, and for decision support tasks, for example, to evaluate different courses of action. Now, with that being said, my analysis of the risks and benefits stem precisely from this understanding. So let's try to break down and see what are the implications if AI is integrated in even some small neural functions. So in terms of benefits, some models might be advantageous in some neural tasks, but I'm going to caveat that, and always with the additional layer of redundancy and human oversight to ensure that in the event of a system failure, the repercussions would not be potentially catastrophic. So to provide an example, AI can quickly synthesize data from diverse sources, including civilian and military sensors, and they can offer quicker threat identification. But again, provided that it is supported by significant checks and redundancies. Now, in the case of advanced AI models, hallucinations generated by deep learning models could even go as far as helping out decision makers or military personnel to test out different tactics and simulations that present unique and unpredictable scenarios. Now, when it comes to the risk, from a broad security perspective, there are risks that arise at the interaction between humans and machines, where AI may reflect the biases of their creators and could lead to scenarios where decision makers or support staff place too much or even too little trust in AI-generated predictions or recommendations. Of course, this bias becomes particularly problematic in the context of nuclear decision-making, where time compression, high level of stress, and high pressures will be fairly common there. So overall technological limitations of today's systems obviously have an impact even in systems that are not directly tied to NC3, such as, for example, for intelligence collection. And that is because they would relay information to decision makers, which could be incorrect or being tampered with, for example. So potentially leading to escalation under false premises or the inverse. So as you can see, current models present really many high risks, and our ability to mitigate these risks today is inadequate. So there is a lot of ongoing research focused on addressing these technological limitations, especially to ensure that they can operate reliably under adversarial conditions, or to make the systems more explainable. But unfortunately, research hasn't made any progress yet. So, as I said before, as the technology matures, it is possible that some of these issues may be overcome, but it is also possible that it will create a new set of issues which we're just unable to predict at this point in time. And so the easiest way to sum it up is there's way too many ifs and whens at this point. So, but apart from the risks and benefits, from a broad security and strategic stability perspective, the integration of AI into specific NC3 functions that are directly or indirectly tied again to NC3 is so much more nuanced. There is really a huge landscape of risk and implication which depend on the attributes of the models that are being considered for integration, on the area of integration, not only within NC3, but again, with a multitude of other systems that feed into it, as well as the level of control and checks on the technology. Okay, so now official sources do not provide many details about how nuclear weapon states envision today's AI models playing into their nuclear programs or NC3 systems. On a general basis, each state approaches integration with new ones that reflect specific doctrines, military cultures, civil military application, and ethical considerations. It is difficult, though, to have a detailed assessment due to the limited publicly available information on this topic. As you can imagine, most of the existing literature is mostly centered on the US. And it lacks in-depth analysis of other nuclear weapon states, particularly from Russia and China. But all the states recognize AI's potential to improve situational awareness, early threat detection, and decision support processes. But they're equally aware of the risk that could skew nuclear decision-making. such as data poisoning and cyber vulnerabilities, potentially leading to unintended escalation and undermining strategic stability. But even though official documents might bypass explicit nuclear mentions, as I said before, open source records hint at a shared understanding that a fully automated nuclear decision-making is a no-go, and that there will always be human control over nuclear decisions. Therefore, although the concept of keeping humans in the loop seems universally acknowledged by nuclear weapon states, each interpretation of this concept varies. So, for example, the US, the UK, and France, as I said, are clear about maintaining human oversight in nuclear decisions, while China and Russia present a bit more opaque stance. But there is an underlying consensus, even among Chinese and Russian experts and military leaders, that AI will not supplant human control strategic decision making. So, what can be done to mitigate this risk? Well, first of all, states should take advantage of the momentum that the discussion surrounding AI in the military is having. For example, just yesterday, the US held a closed-door conference with some of the states that signed their political declaration on responsible use of AI in the military, which was launched last year, to share best practices with military and civilian delegates of other state signatories. Meanwhile, we're approaching the second year of the Responsible AI in the Military so-called RE-AIM Summit, where governmental representatives, but also experts from within the industry and academia will gather in Seoul by the end of this year to discuss precisely about this topic. On top of that, the UK AI Safety Summit released the Bletchley Declaration last November, which, among other things, recognized safety and security risks posed by so-called frontier AI models, and was signed by France, UK, and the US, and China, among others. A couple of weeks after the Bletchley Declaration, on the sideline of the Asia-Pacific Economic Forum, President Biden and Xi Jinping bilaterally further reiterated the need to keep on discussing about risks and safety issues associated with AI, and thus setting the basis for future dialogue on this issue. Now, although these events do not necessarily address the nuclear angle of military AI, these are really important developments and initiatives that underscore the necessity of better understanding these issues and to take actions towards risk reduction. Now, with that in mind, for all the reasons that I have explained before, and in line with the Bletchley Declaration's called for a nuanced understanding of risks, my first recommendation is for nuclear weapon states to create a risk assessment strategy. So this strategy should employ metrics to establish thresholds for high-risk integration by assessing how specific AI models' characteristics, which could include all sorts of AI models, could impact the integration area. Now, this recommendation is informed by all these nuanced implications that I stated before. But basically, to put this into perspective, we have already assessed that a current state-of-the-art model that can perform a wide variety of tasks and is highly performing, but at the same time is black box and prone to hallucination, is obviously not fit for integration within strategic decision-making components. This is obvious, and this is not what nuclear weapon states are seeking. But on the other hand, this doesn't mean that a model like that would necessarily be risky if it's integrated for training or wargaming purposes, for example. But then again, on the other hand, this also doesn't mean that a narrow function that is not directly tied to strategic decision making cannot have high level of risk of integration. So, for instance, a black box vision model without verification and redundancy, or with vulnerabilities to hallucinations or cyber attack, provide high level of risk if we integrate it for intelligence collections or in early warning systems, for example. So therefore, a risk assessment framework would allow for the identification of high-risk AI integrations in specific NC3 applications, with the critical threshold being that any failure of AI must never ever lead to miscalculations and increase the risk of catastrophic outcomes. Now, as for my last recommendations, nuclear weapon states should impose a moratorium on the integration of AI into NC3 until a risk assessment framework is developed and thresholds for its high-risk integrations are established. Now, such a moratorium would offer the chance to review the technology thoroughly, considering its maturity, capabilities, and drawbacks within the nuclear decision-making systems. It would create a space for global dialogue on ethical standards and promoting an inclusive dialogue with other non-governmental actors that are currently developing advanced AI systems, particularly the private sector. While I foresee that there may be some hurdles due to the perceived technological hindrance to technological advancement, the moratorium would in fact ensure progress with minimal security impact, but with maximum societal benefit. And similar to the nuclear testing hold, we need a moratorium on the integration of AI until a risk assessment framework is developed and until we know how to set thresholds for high-risk integrations.